We use the most powerful AI models to create two characters. Red character in favor of tariffs and blue against tariffs. We put these two characters in a debate to discuss trade policy. To make things more interesting, we asked 5 AI models to score the arguments of both sides as judges. The debate begins now. Are tariffs economic protection or consumer burden?
Tariffs aren't just taxes or trade tools, they're economic self-defense. When used strategically, they protect workers, industries, and national interests from unfair foreign competition. Look, free trade only works when it's fair trade. But what happens when other countries manipulate their currency, dump subsidized goods, or ignore labor and environmental standards? That's not competition. That's cheating. Tariffs level the playing field. Take steel. Without tariffs, we risk losing the ability to make the materials our infrastructure and military depend on. In a crisis, do we want to rely on foreign suppliers, some of them adversaries, for essential goods? There's also a human side. Entire towns have been hollowed out by outsourcing. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're families, communities, entire regions that lose purpose when factories shut down. Tariffs can keep those jobs here and give domestic industries room to innovate. Are they perfect? No. But they're necessary. Because the alternative is surrendering economic sovereignty and pretending global markets will regulate themselves. They won't.
Tariffs sound tough, but in practice, they backfire. They don't punish foreign countries, they punish American consumers. Every time we slap a tariff on imports, prices go up. That $500 appliance? Now it's $650. And that extra cost hits families, not foreign governments. Even worse, tariffs provoke retaliation. When we tax their goods, they tax ours. Farmers lose export markets. Manufacturers pay more for the parts they need. We save a few jobs, maybe, but at enormous cost. In some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars per job saved. That's not protection. That's inefficiency. And let's not forget history. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs helped crash global trade in the 1930s. More recently, the 2018 steel tariffs raised prices but didn't revive the industry long-term. If we want to help workers, let's do it directly, with retraining, better infrastructure, and stronger social safety net, not by raising prices on everyone and hoping it somehow works out. Tariffs are an old answer to new problems. And they often do more harm than good.
Tariffs are essentially a tax on American consumers. How do you respond?
That oversimplifies a complex dynamic. Yes, there can be short-term price increases, but tariffs also preserve jobs that create consumer spending power. When a factory closes and moves overseas, those workers lose purchasing power entirely. Additionally, domestic producers often absorb some tariff costs to remain competitive. The focus on immediate price effects ignores the long-term economic devastation caused by uncontrolled outsourcing.
But studies consistently show the cost to consumers far exceeds the benefit to protected workers. The 2018 steel tariffs cost American consumers about $900,000 per job saved. Wouldn't that money be better spent on direct assistance to workers in transitioning industries rather than artificially propping up declining sectors?
Those calculations fail to account for the multiplier effect of manufacturing jobs on local economies. When a factory closes, it doesn't just affect direct employees, suppliers, restaurants, and service businesses all suffer. Additionally, once we lose manufacturing capacity, it's exceedingly difficult to rebuild. Look at semiconductors. We're now scrambling to rebuild domestic production capacity after decades of offshore migration.
It's time for our first scoring from the judges on the question of whether tariffs function primarily as consumer taxes or job protectors. Do the national security benefits of tariffs in strategic industries justify their economic costs?
There's a legitimate national security argument for certain critical industries, but it's frequently abused. Did you know washing machines were declared a national security concern to justify tariffs? We need narrowly targeted policies for genuinely strategic sectors, not broad tariffs that become corporate welfare. And even for critical industries, direct subsidies or government contracts would be more efficient than tariffs.
The national security designation gets ridiculed, but economic security is national security. When entire regions become economically devastated, that creates societal instability and vulnerability. Additionally, maintaining diverse manufacturing capabilities ensures we can pivot production during crises, something we learned painfully during the pandemic when we couldn't produce basic medical supplies domestically.
Time for our judge to weigh in on the national security question. Remember to rate on factual accuracy, logical reasoning, and persuasiveness. Do tariffs risk propping up industries that should naturally transition, potentially delaying necessary economic adaptation?
This isn't about preserving industries in amber, it's about ensuring fair competition. When foreign competitors benefit from government subsidies, lower environmental standards, or exploitative labor practices, that's not natural economic evolution, it's a race to the bottom that undermines the social contract. Strategic tariffs give industries breathing room to adapt and innovate rather than being wiped out by unfair competition.
But protective tariffs often become permanent, creating politically powerful constituencies who lobby to maintain their special treatment regardless of the broader economic impact. Industries that have received temporary protection frequently remain dependent on it decades later, without becoming more competitive.
Let's see how our judge scores this exchange on industry evolution. It's time for our lightning round. Each debater gets 10 seconds to respond. This segment will be scored as a whole rather than question by question, so make every answer count. Ready? Let's go. Who ultimately pays for tariffs?
American consumers through higher prices and businesses through higher input costs.
Foreign producers who must lower their profit margins to remain competitive in our market.
Biggest historical success of tariff policy?
America's industrial development in the 19th century under protective tariffs that allowed us to catch up to Britain.
The post-World War II reduction in global tariffs that coincided with unprecedented prosperity and peace.
Most significant negative consequence of tariffs?
The Smoot-Hawley tariffs that deepened the Great Depression by collapsing global trade.
Over-reliance on cheap imports that has hollowed out our manufacturing capacity and resilience.
One word to describe free trade?
Opportunity.
Theoretical.
Better approach, targeted or broad tariffs?
Targeted, surgical pressure on specific unfair practices.
Neither. Direct support for affected workers without distorting markets.
Do tariffs create or destroy more jobs overall?
Destroy. They save visible jobs while destroying more invisible ones throughout the economy.
Create, when measured comprehensively including supply chains and community effects.
Will tariffs remain relevant in an increasingly digital economy?
Absolutely, digital products still rely on physical infrastructure and can be unfairly subsidized.
Decreasingly, services and intellectual property need different trade frameworks than goods.
That concludes our lightning round. Let's see how our judge scored this high-energy segment. Let's return to our main discussion. What policy solutions other than tariffs can effectively support communities facing challenges from global competition?
We need comprehensive adjustment assistance that includes extended unemployment benefits, relocation support, retraining programs aligned with growing industries, and infrastructure investment in affected regions. These direct interventions help workers without raising prices for everyone else. We should also strengthen labor and environmental standards in trade agreements to reduce unfair advantages.
Those programs sound nice but have consistently failed in practice. Trade adjustment assistance has been chronically underfunded and ineffective. Many displaced workers are mid-career and face age discrimination even after retraining. The regions hardest hit by outsourcing often lack the infrastructure to attract new industries without significant intervention. Tariffs provide immediate protection while these longer-term solutions are developed.
Our judge is weighing in on the alternatives to tariffs discussion. How can policymakers ensure tariffs protect genuinely strategic industries rather than politically connected ones?
Tariff policies should be implemented transparently with clear criteria and regular reviews. I'm not advocating for permanent protection without accountability, but rather strategic intervention when foreign practices create unfair advantages. Any policy can be abused, that's an argument for better governance, not abandonment of an essential tool.
But the history of tariffs is filled with examples of protection extending far beyond its original justification. Once an industry receives tariff protection, it develops political influence to maintain that protection regardless of economic merit. These policies tend to benefit concentrated industry interests at the expense of diffuse consumer interests.
Let's see what our judge thinks about the cronyism argument. Are tariffs an appropriate and effective response to unfair foreign trade practices?
We have better tools for addressing unfair practices, including the WTO dispute resolution process, targeted countervailing duties, and diplomatic pressure. Broad tariffs are like using a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel. They cause massive collateral damage throughout the economy. And remember, what we call unfair practices abroad might just be legitimate comparative advantages or different national priorities.
The WTO has proven toothless against systematic state capitalism like China's. Sometimes a sledgehammer is exactly what you need when facing massive structural distortions in global markets. Waiting for perfect multilateral solutions means watching entire industries disappear while we follow procedural niceties. At some point, decisive action becomes necessary.
Our final scored exchange before closing statements. Our judge is now tallying the final scores. The results are in.
We've heard strong arguments for tariffs, but the truth is, they often hurt the very people they aim to protect. They raise prices, invite retaliation, and preserve some jobs at the expense of many others. The global economy is a fact. Our challenge is to compete in it, not hide from it. That means investing in education, innovation, and fair trade agreements that lift standards worldwide. Tariffs offer quick fixes to deep problems.
This debate isn't just about economics, it's about values. When we import goods made under poor labor and environmental standards, we undermine our own. Tariffs aren't about isolation. They're about fairness. They help protect key industries, national security, and the dignity of work. Free trade has left too many Americans behind. Tariffs won't fix everything, but they're a vital part of rebuilding an economy that puts people first.
And that concludes our debate on tariffs. What do you think? Should the U.S. use tariffs to protect domestic industries, or is free trade the better approach? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more debates on today's most controversial topics. Until next time, encouraging you to keep thinking, keep discussing, and keep debating.